Laura. At this stage, I can offer nothing more than my word. I am a senior government employee in the intelligence community. I hope you understand that contacting you is extremely high risk, and you are willing to agree to the following precautions before I share more. This will not be a waste of your time. The following sounds complex, but should only take minutes to complete for someone technical. I would like to confirm out of email that the keys we exchanged were not intercepted and replaced by your surveillance. Please confirm that no one has ever had a copy of your private key and that it uses a strong passphrase. Assume your adversary is capable of 1 trillion guesses per second. If the device you store the private key and enter your passphrase on has been hacked, it is trivial to decrypt our communications. Understand that the above steps are not bulletproof and are intended only to give us breathing room. In the end, if you publish the source material, I will likely be immediately implicated. This must not deter you from releasing the information I will provide. Thank you, and be careful. Citizen 4.
That's right, and this is all about creating an independent record. To me, this goes to the question of independently verifying what the government is doing. That's why I keep going back to that question.
More with David Sirota after CBS News traffic and weather on KKZF Thornton, Denver, Boulder, KM7.
Hey, can you hear me? I am here, David. How are you? Well, I would just start by pointing to what Barack Obama himself said about those questions when he was running for the office that he now occupies in December of 2007. He said, quote, "The president does not have the power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to the nation." So by Obama's own words, the president does not have the power that he's now exercising under the Constitution. And as far as why it matters, on August 1st, 2007, when he laid out his reasons why he was running for office and why he thought it was so important to change the way we were doing things, he said, quote, "No more ignoring the law when it's inconvenient. That is not who we are. We will again set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers." So to allow presidents to simply start wars on their own without any...
You asked why I picked you. I didn't. You did. The surveillance you've experienced means you've been selected, a term which will mean more to you as you learn about how the modern SIGINT system works. For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, article you write, site you visit, subject line you type, and packet you route is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not. Your victimization by the NSA system means that you are well aware of the threat that unrestricted, secret police pose for democracies. This is a story few but you can tell.
Thank you for inviting me here to give me the opportunity to express my story. But let me give you some of my background. I spent about 4 years in the military, and then I went into NSA directly. So I ended up with about 37 years of service combined. Most of it was a lot of fun, I tell you. It was really a lot of fun breaking these puzzles, solving problems and things like that. And that's really what I did. I fundamentally started working out with data, looking at data and data systems and how you do that. I was developing this concept of analysis that you could lay it out in such a way that it could be coded and executed electronically, meaning you could automate analysis, okay? And it has to do with metadata and using metadata relationships. So that was my whole theme there at NSA. Eventually that's what I ended up to. I was the only one there doing that, by the way. So at any rate, 9/11 happened, and it must have been right after, a few days, no more than a week after 9/11, that they had decided to begin actively spying on everyone in this country. And they wanted that back part of our program to run all the spying, all right? So that's exactly what they did. And then they started taking the telecom data and it expanded after that. So, I mean, the one I knew was AT&T, and that one provided 320 million records every day. That program was reauthorized every 45 days by what I called the Yes Committee, which was Hayden and Tennant and the DOJ. The program was called Stellar Wind. So first I went to the House Intelligence Committee, and the staff member that I personally knew there, and she then went to the chairman of that committee, Nancy Pelosi, who was the minority rep. They were all briefed into the program at the time, by the way, and all the other programs that were going on, including all these CIA programs. I wasn't alone in this. There were 4 others out of NSA, and we were all trying to work internally in the government over these years, trying to get them to come around to being constitutionally acceptable and take it into the courts and have the courts oversight of it too. So we naively kept thinking that could happen, and it never did. But at any rate, after that and all the stuff we were doing, they decided to raid us to keep us quiet, threaten us, So we were raided simultaneously, 4 of us. In my case, they came in with guns drawn. I don't know why they did that, but they did, so.
Laura, I will answer what I remember of your questions as best I can. Forgive the lack of structure. I am not a writer, and I have to draft this in a great hurry. What you know as Stellar Wind has grown. SSO, the expanded special source operations that took over Stellar Wind's share of the pie, has spread all over the world to practically include comprehensive coverage of the United States. Disturbingly, the amount of U.S. communication ingested by NSA is still increasing. Publicly, we complain that things are going dark, but in fact, our accesses are improving. The truth is that the NSA has never in its history collected more than it does now. I know the location of most domestic interception points, and that the largest telecommunication companies in the U.S. are betraying the trust of their customers, which I can prove. We are building the greatest weapon for oppression in the history of man, yet its directors exempt themselves from accountability. NSA Director Keith Alexander lied to Congress, which I can prove. Billions of U.S. communications are being intercepted. In gathering evidence of wrongdoing, I focused on the wronging of the American people, but believe me when I say that the surveillance we live under is the highest privilege compared to how we treat the rest of the world. This I can also prove. On cyber operations, the government's public position is that we still lack a policy framework. This too is a lie. There is a detailed policy framework, a kind of martial law for cyber operations created by the White House. It's called Presidential Policy Directive 20 and was finalized at the end of last year. This I can also prove. I appreciate your concern for my safety, but I already know how this will end for me, and I accept the risk. If I have luck and you are careful, You will have everything you need. I ask only that you ensure this information makes it home to the American public.
Does the NSA routinely intercept American citizens' emails?
No.
Does the NSA intercept Americans' cell phone conversations?
No.
Google searches?
No.
Text messages?
No.
Amazon.com orders?
No.
Bank records?
No.
What judicial consent is required for NSA to intercept communications and information involving American citizens?
Within the United States, that would be the FBI lead. If it was a foreign actor in the United States, the FBI would still have to lead and could work that with NSA or other intelligence agencies as authorized. But to conduct that kind of collection in the United States, it would have to go through a court order, and the court would have to authorize it. We are not authorized to do it, nor do we do it.
All rise. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning and welcome to the Ninth Circuit. The first case for argument is Jewell versus National Security Agency. You may proceed.
May it please the court, Kevin Bankston for Carolyn Jewell and her fellow plaintiff appellants in Jewell v. NSA. Your honors, plaintiffs have specifically alleged that their own communications and communications records have been acquired by the government. But the district court found that we had failed to allege facts that differentiated the injury that our plaintiffs suffered from the injury suffered by every other AT&T user whose communications and records have been acquired by the government, basically concluding that so long as everyone is being surveilled, no one has standing to sue. However, to deny standing to persons who are injured simply because many others are also injured would mean that the most injurious and widespread government actions could be questioned by nobody.
Do you have anything concrete that, in fact, a specific communication of your client was intercepted?
We have evidence that all of the communications passing between AT&T's network and other networks in their Northern California facility have been intercepted, and so that would necessarily include the internet communications of our Northern California plaintiffs. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May it please the court, I'm Thomas Byron from the Department of Justice, here on behalf of the government defendants. We think this litigation need not be resolved in federal court in light of the oversight of the political branches, both legislative and executive, which provides a better opportunity for oversight and resolution of the concerns raised concerning nationwide policies of alleged surveillance in these complaints.
Even if it's revealed that one or more of the plaintiffs had email or telephone conversations intercepted that had nothing to do with national security?
Your Honor, I don't know that anyone necessarily would have standing to raise the particular claims at issue in these two cases. We think instead that the kinds of claims at issue here against these defendants are those that are better suited to resolution before the representative branches of our government.
So what rule would the judiciary have if your approach is adopted?
Judge Pregerson, I think that
I mean, we just get out of the way, is that it?
Well, Judge Pregerson, I think that there is a narrow category, a subset of cases in which it may be appropriate to step aside for that narrow category of cases.
But the judiciary plays a role.
To be sure, Judge Pregerson.
In our system.
Yes, Your Honor. And we don't mean to diminish that.
You're asking us to abdicate that role.
No, Your Honor, but it is a question of this court's discretion whether to reach that issue. We do think that there is simply no way for the litigation to proceed without risk of divulging those very questions of privileged information that would cause, as the Director of National Intelligence has explained, exceptionally grave damage to national security if disclosed.
Thanks for having me. If anybody has any questions, like I said, just raise your hand, and I'll try to call on you as soon as I possibly can. So, who here actually feels like they are under surveillance pretty regularly?
Anyone at Occupy is, no?
Everyone inside of Occupy. How many people here have been arrested and had at their court date, they had their phone taken into the back room? How many people here had their retina scanned? Wow. So you guys are actually, in a sense, the canaries in the coal mine, right? Because the incentives are all lined up against you. Anybody see on the subway, link your MetroCard to your debit card, right? And like auto refill? This is a concept which is key to everything we'll talk about today, and it's called linkability. Take one piece of data and link it to another piece of data. So for example, if you have your MetroCard and you have your debit card, you have those things and you can draw a line between them, right? So that's like not a scary thing, except your bank card is tied to everything else that you do during the day. So now they know where you're going, when you make purchases. So when they decide to target you, they can actually recreate your exact steps with a MetroCard and with the credit card alone. Like literally where you go and what you buy. And potentially, by linking that data with other people on similar travel plans, they can figure out who you talked to and who you met with. When you then take cell phone data, which logs your location, and you link up purchasing data, MetroCard data, and your debit card, you start to get what you could call metadata in aggregate over a person's life. And metadata in aggregate is content. It tells a story about you, which is made up of facts, but is not necessarily true. So for example, just because you were on the corner and all those data points point to it, it doesn't mean you committed the crime. So it's important to note that if someone has a perception of you having done a thing, it will now follow you for the rest of your life. So just keep in mind that what happens to you guys, for example, with fingerprints and retinal scans and photographs, that is what is going to happen to people in the future when they resist policy changes and when they try to protest in a totally constitutionally protected way.
This for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. So does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not?
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
The encrypted archive should be available to you within 7 days. The key will follow when everything else is done. The material I provide and investigative effort required will be too much for any one person. I recommend, at a very minimum, you involve Glenn Greenwald. I believe you know him. The plain text of the payload will include my true name details for the record, though it will be your decision as to whether or how to declare my involvement. My personal desire is that you paint the target directly on my back. No one, not even my most trusted confidant, is aware of my intentions, and it would not be fair for them to fall under suspicion for my actions. You may be the only one who can prevent that, and that is by immediately nailing me to the cross, rather than trying to protect me as a source. On timing regarding meeting up in Hong Kong. The first rendezvous attempt will be at 10 a.m. local time on Monday. We will meet in the hallway outside of a restaurant in the Mirror Hotel. I will be working on a Rubik's Cube so you can identify me. Approach me and ask if I know the hours of the restaurant. I'll respond by stating that I'm not sure and suggest you try the lounge instead. I'll offer to show you where it is, and at that point, we're good. You simply need to follow naturally.
As far as positioning, I mean, if you want us to sit in any particular way or whatever.
You know, I'm gonna go there. So I get better light. Just want to know where the first place is.
So, there's so many different enormous stories just that are kind of standalone stories that even certain things about individual document that can just be their own story. And I just want to start churning those stories out. I basically woke up this morning and already started writing stories. So I'm hoping to, start publishing within like a day or 2 days.
Okay.
As long as you're good with that.
Yeah.
And so as far as like the stuff we have to talk about, I mean, I'm kind of like dichotomizing it between, stuff that I'd like to talk to you about in terms of like the documents and the content, and Laura has a bunch of questions about that as well. Sort of while we're working through the documents, getting your take on a lot of this stuff that, will help me understand it better. But then also the sort of you story, right? Like the who you are, why, what you've done, why you've done what you've done.
Yeah.
And I'd love to do that first.
Okay.
In part because you're the only one who could do that. So I'd like to just get it done so that it's done. And also because, it might be that you want to do that early because it might be necessary, or we might choose to have that done early. Tell me your thoughts on just where you are with that.
The primary one on that, I think I've expressed it a couple times online, is I feel the modern media has a big focus on personalities.
Totally.
And I'm a little concerned the more we focus on that, the more they're going to use that as a distraction. And I don't necessarily want that to happen, which is why I've consistently said, I'm not the story here. Nervous.
It's a very, very cheap pen that just the slightest force broke. Go ahead.
Anything I can do to help you guys get this out, I will do. I don't have any experience with media, with how this works. So I'm kind of learning as I go.
Right. So I just want to get a sense of why did you decide to do what you've done?
So for me, it all comes down to state power against the people's ability to meaningfully oppose that power. And I'm sitting there every day getting paid to design methods to amplify that state power. And I'm realizing that if, the policy switches that are the only thing that restrain these states were changed, you couldn't meaningfully oppose these. I mean, you would have to be the most incredibly sophisticated technical actor in existence. I mean, I'm not sure there's anybody, no matter how gifted you are, who could oppose all of the offices and all the bright people, even all the mediocre people out there with all of their tools and all their capabilities. And as I saw the promise of the Obama administration be betrayed and walked away from, and in fact actually advance the things that had been promised to be sort of curtailed and reined in and dialed back, and actually get worse, particularly drone strikes, which I also learned at NSA we could watch drone videos from our desktops. As I saw that really hardened me to action.
In real time?
In real time, yeah. It'll stream a lower quality of the video to your desktop. Typically, you'd be watching surveillance drones as opposed to actually murder drones where they're going out there to bomb somebody. But you'll have a drone that's just following somebody's house for hours and hours, and you won't know who it is because you don't have the context for that. But it's just a page where it's lists and lists of drone feeds in all these different countries under all these different code names, and you can just click on which one you want to see.
Right. But so if your self-interest is to live in a world in which there's maximum privacy, doing something that could put you into prison in which your privacy is completely destroyed is sort of the antithesis of that. How did you reach the point where that was a worthwhile calculation for you?
I remember what the internet was like before it was being watched, and there's never been anything in the history of man that's like it. I mean, you could, again, have children from one part of the world having an equal discussion where, they were sort of granted and the same respect for their ideas in conversation with experts in a field from another part of the world on any topic, anywhere, anytime, all the time. And it was free and unrestrained. And we've seen the chilling of that and the cooling of that and the changing of that model towards something in which people self-police their own views. And they literally make jokes about ending up on the list if they donate to a political cause or if they say something in a discussion. And it's become an expectation that we're being watched. Many people I've talked to have mentioned that they're careful about what they type into search engines because they know that it's being recorded. And that limits the boundaries of their intellectual exploration. And I am more willing to risk imprisonment or any other negative outcome personally than I am willing to risk the curtailment of my intellectual freedom and that of those around me whom I care for equally as I do for myself. And again, that's not to say that I'm self-sacrificing, because it gives me, I feel good in my human experience to know that I can contribute to the good of others.
Could you elaborate on that?
So, I don't know how much of the programs and the actual technical capacities everybody's talked to you about, but there's an infrastructure in place in the United States and worldwide that NSA has built in cooperation with other governments as well that intercepts basically every digital communication, every radio communication, every analog communication that it has sensors in place to detect. And with these capabilities, basically the vast majority of human and computer-to-computer communications, device-based communications, which sort of inform the relationships between humans, are automatically ingested without targeting. And that allows individuals to retroactively search your communications based on self-certifications. So, for example, if I wanted to see the content of your email or, your wife's phone calls or anything like that, all I have to do is use what's called a selector, any kind of thing in the communications chain that might uniquely or almost uniquely identify you as an individual. And I'm talking about things like email addresses, IP addresses, phone numbers, credit cards, even passwords that are unique to you that aren't used by anyone else. I can input those into the system, and it will not only go back through the database and go, have I seen this anywhere in the past? It will basically put an additional level of scrutiny on it moving into the future that says, if this is detected now or at any time in the future, I want this to go to me immediately and alert me in real time that you're communicating with someone, things like that.
So I don't know who you are or anything about you.
Okay. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton, a defense contractor. I'm sort of on loan to NSA. I don't talk to a Booz Allen boss. I don't get tasking from Booz Allen. It's all from NSA.
So I don't know your name.
Oh, sorry. My name is Edward Snowden. I go by Ed. Edward Joseph Snowden's the full name.
S-N?
O-W-D-E-N.
And where are you from?
I was born in North Carolina, a small town, Elizabeth City. There's a Coast Guard station there. I'm from a military family. Yeah. But I spent most of my time growing up around Fort Meade in Maryland.
And your family, what's the consequences for them?
This is actually what has made this hardest. My family doesn't know what's happening. They're unaware. I don't think I'll be able to keep the family ties that I've had for my life because of the risk of associating them with this. And I'll leave, what to publish on this and what not to publish to you guys. I trust you to be responsible on this. But basically, the closer I stay to my family, the more likely they are to be leaned on.
So you don't want me to report this?
I mean, we don't. Yeah, we definitely want to do whatever we can not to include them or bring them into the mix.
So, that's fine. I won't.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you. Can we just stop for a second, do the document, and then go back to that? That makes sense. What do I need? Do I need an email address that we're using, or?
Well, so you can send them, once you've encrypted it, you can send it from whatever you think is appropriate. The main thing is you've got to encapsulate all of this in a way that it can't be decrypted and read when it's in transit across the network, or on either of the endpoints.
Okay. I mean, just so you know, these documents are basically all going to be public within 48 hours, 72 hours.
This is simply, you want to get in the process of doing this for everything because it seems hard, but it's not hard.
Okay.
This is super easy.
So just walk me through it. And
show me the actual folder structure where these files are first. How many documents did you say there were?
7.
All right. Well, while you're working.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. How many documents are we talking about? Because when The Guardian did WikiLeaks, technical people set up a system so that they were available for anybody to see. And I just wonder if it's possible to do the same thing.
That would be the ideal end game, but because some of these documents are legitimately classified in ways that could cause harm to people and methods, I'm comfortable in my technical ability to protect them. I mean, you could literally shoot me or torture me, and I could not disclose the password if I wanted to. I have the sophistication to do that. There are some journalists that I think could do that, but there are a number of them that couldn't. But the question becomes, can an organization actually control that information in that manner without risking basically an uncontrolled disclosure? But I do agree with that. Honestly, I don't want to be the person making the decisions on what should be public and what shouldn't, which is why, rather than publishing these on my own or putting them out openly, I'm running them through journalists so that my bias, and my things, because clearly I have some strongly held views, are removed from that equation, and the public interest is being represented in the most responsible manner.
Yeah.
Actually, given your sort of geographic familiarity with the UK and whatnot, I'd like to point out that GCHQ has probably the most invasive
I know that.
network intercept program anywhere in the world. It's called Tempora, Tempora, and it's the world's first full take, they call it, and that means content in addition to metadata on everything.
So this is what I'd like to do, just in terms of scheduling, if it's good with everybody else. Do you feel like you're done with what you?
Okay.
So I'm anxious to go back, get those articles done, and then there's a bunch of documents that aren't about those first 2 or 3 stories that I'd like to spend time with you, kind of going over. And
I'm not going anywhere.
Do that. You're available? You want to check your book first?
Yeah, let me check my schedule.
Is that good for you, or do you want to? Okay.
Hello? Yes? My meal was great. Thank you very much. No, I still have some left, and I think I'm going to be eating it later, so you can just leave me alone for now. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye. Let's fix that real quick. So another fun thing I was telling Laura about this, all of these new VoIP phones, they have little computers in them, and you can hot mic these over the network all the time, even when the receiver's down. So as long as it's plugged in, it can be listening on you, and I hadn't even considered that earlier, but yeah.
Okay.
There are so many ways. This could be, everything that's in here is pretty much going to be on the public record at some point. We should operate on that.
Yeah, I think we are.
So, do you have your air gap machine?
I do.
You can pop that out. Do you have an understanding or commitment on when you guys are going to press with the first stories?
It's about 7 or 8 in the morning in London.
Okay. Well, let's see here. Oh, hey, look, there's the other one. Pro tip, let's not leave the same SD cards in our laptops forever in the future. Did you know that this was still kicking around in your laptop?
Yeah, I mean, that was
Okay.
the...
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, yeah.
This is right there. You will have a new one that looks exactly identical, that's a different archive, so you might want to take a Sharpie to it or something. Could you pass me my magic mantle of power? Sorry.
I'm gonna go for both.
Is that about the possibility of
Visual,
overhead?
yeah, visual collection.
I don't think at this point there's anything in this regard that will shock us. We've become pretty... In fact, Ewan said before, he's like, I'm never leaving my room. He's like, I'm never leaving anything in my room again, not a single machine. I was like, you've been infected by the paranoia bug, and that was all of us. And the way he said it, he was like, I would never leave a single device in the room again alone.
My bag is getting heavier and heavier.
Exactly.
Leaving less and less.
That's your evil influence, Ed.
All right, I'm going to need you to enter your root password because I don't know what it is. If you want to use this one, you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
It looks like your root password's about 4 characters long anyway.
It's usually a lot longer, but that's just like the one-time only thing, right?
So it is...
it had been a lot longer, but ever since I knew that it was just like a one-time only session one, I've been making it shorter. Is that not good?
It's actually not. I was expressing this with Laura either. The issue is because of the fact that it's got a hardware MAC address and things like that, if people are able to identify your machine and they're able to...
This is the fact you're about to break the most upsetting story.
Right, that's true. That's true.
So they might kind of prioritize...
It's 10 letters. I type very quickly. It actually is 10 letters.
Okay, so 10 letters would be good if they had to brute force the entire key space.
Right.
That would still probably only take a couple of days for NSA. That's a fire alarm.
Okay. Hopefully it just sounds like a 3-second test. Whereas, do you want to call the desk and ask? I think it's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue, but it's interesting that they're just...
Did that happen before?
Maybe they got mad that they couldn't listen into us via the phone anymore.
Is the fire alarm gone off before?
No, that's the first time that's happened. Yeah, see, just in case they've got like an alert that goes through. But that's unusual.
You probably
might have to evacuate.
Shouldn't ignore that. I don't know.
If
it goes,
no, it's not continuous.
It's not continuous. No, I'm just saying if it continues.
And then we go and we meet the guys down in the lobby.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave it for now. Let me finish this up. All right. Not that they're going to answer because they probably got like 7,000 calls.
Yeah.
Hi, we hear a loud buzzing on the 10th floor. Can you tell us what that is? Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Bye. Fire alarm testing maintenance.
That's good. Yeah. That's what we wanted to hear.
Nice of them to Nice of them to let us know about that in advance. I just wanted to give you kind of a quick tour. When Laura was looking at this, she was kind of salivating and couldn't stop, like, actually reading the documents.
Right. So we'll try and restrain ourselves without promising that we'll succeed.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain a brief overview of what these are and how they're organized. The beginning are just some documents of interest. The primary purpose of the second archive is to bring the focus over to SSO. As opposed to PRISM, and this is in general. It's SSO, or the Special Source Operations. Those are the worldwide passive collection on networks. They're both domestic to the U.S. and international. There's a lot of different ways they do it, but corporate partnerships are one of the primary things they do domestically. They also do this with multinationals that might be headquartered in the U.S. who they can kind of coerce or just pay into giving them access. And they also do it bilaterally with the assistance of certain governments. And that's basically on the premise that they go, all right, well, we'll help you set the system up if you give us all the data from it. There's a lot more in here than any one person or probably one team could do.
Right.
X-Keyscore deep dive. X-Keyscore in general, and there's a huge folder of documentation on X-Keyscore and how it works, is the front-end system that analysts use for querying that sort of ocean of raw SIGINT that I was telling you about. All of that stuff where you can sort of do the retroactive searches and live searches and get flagging and whatnot. X-Keyscore is the front end for that. I'm just going to show you one slide here because Laura thought it was valuable and was talking about kind of how these capabilities ramp up in sophistication over time. This is kind of nice. As of fiscal year 2011, they could monitor 1 billion telephone or internet sessions simultaneously per one of these devices. And they could collect at a rate of about 125 gigabytes a second, which is a terabit.
That's just each one of these devices?
That's for each one of these, yeah.
How many Tumult missions would that be then?
Per this, back then, there were 20 sites. There's 10 at DoD installations, but these are all outdated. We've expanded pretty rapidly, but still 20 sites, that's at least 20 billion.
This all needs to get out, you know what I mean? It's like, just in terms of understanding the capabilities, like it's so opaque.
It's not science fiction. This stuff is happening right now.
No, that's what I mean. It's like the magnitude of it, and like this is a pretty inaccessible technical document, but even this like is really chilling. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean we should be having debates about whether we want government to do. I mean this is massive and extraordinary. It's amazing. Even though you know it, even though you know that to see it like the physical blueprints of it and sort of the technical expressions of it really hits home in like a super visceral way that is so needed.
This is CNN Breaking News.
An explosive new report is reigniting the concerns that your privacy is being violated to protect America's security. It reveals a court order giving the National Security Agency blanket access to millions of Verizon customers' records on a daily basis.
Earlier, I had the chance to conduct the first TV interview with the reporter who broke this story wide open, Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian. Congratulations on the scoop. Explain for our viewers why this is important.
It's important because people have understood that the law that this was done under, which is the Patriot Act, enacted in the wake of 9/11, was a law that allowed the government very broad powers to get records about people with a lower level of suspicion than probable cause, the traditional standard. So it's always been assumed that under the Patriot Act, if the government had even any suspicion that you were involved in a crime or terrorism, they could get a lot of information about you. What this court order does that makes it so striking is that it's not directed at any individuals who they believe or have suspicion of committing crimes or part of a terrorist organization. It's collecting the phone records of every single customer of Verizon Business and finding out every single call that they've made internationally and locally. So it's indiscriminate and it's sweeping. It's a government program designed to collect information about all Americans, not just people where they believe there's reason to think they've done anything wrong.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, you know, hearing that the person that you love, that you've spent the decade with, may not be coming back.
What did they ask her?
When was the last time she saw me? Where am I? What am I doing? You know, what does she know about my illness? Things like that. So yeah, they're pretty solidly aware. 'Cause I'm clearly not at home ill.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello. Let me disconnect from the internet.
So, there's some news?
Yes, there was indeed some news. IFconfig today, I think, maybe just a few hours ago.
What's kind of people visiting?
An HR lady, I'm assuming from NSA, as opposed to Booz Allen, because she's accompanied by a police officer, which means NSA police, and they were planning to break into my house, which regular police don't do.
Does she live there?
Yeah, she lives there, so I told her to cooperate fully.
I can't find my phone. Just one second.
You know, worry about herself.
You know what I'm going to do? I'll just take out the stuff I want to use.
Okay.
Okay, well, look, I mean, this is not a surprising development.
Nah, yeah, I know, I plan for it, but it's just, you know, when it's impacting them and they're talking to you, it's a little bit different.
Absolutely. But it's possible that they just noticed that you're missing. I guess it's not really a possibility.
It is, but yeah, I mean...
Let me just get rid of this.
So I obviously was focused on other things than appearance this morning. So,
How did she react? Was she relatively calm about it?
She's relatively calm.
Does she know anything about what you're doing?
She has no idea, and that's. I mean, I feel badly about that, but that's the only way I could think of where like she can't be in trouble.
Did you just basically do I have to go somewhere for reasons that I can't tell you about kind of thing?
I just disappeared when she was on vacation, and I left a note saying, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for a while for work," which isn't unusual for me in my business, you know. So.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple of things just quickly. Are they going to be able to go into your stuff and figure out what you took?
In some sort of like peripheral senses, but not
necessarily. With great specificity.
Yes, because I cast such a wide net. If they do that, the only thing they're going to do is they're going to have a heart attack because they're going to go, he had access to everything.
Yeah.
And they're not going to know what specifically has been done. Now, I think they're going to start to actually feel a little better, although they're not going to be wild about this in any case, when they see that the stories are kind of cleaving to a trend. You know, it's not like here's the list of everybody who works everywhere.
Right. I also think, you know, they're going to be paranoid in the extreme and assuming all kinds of worst case scenarios, which is going to, you know, I think make them react in ways that probably aren't like going to be particularly rational on their part. But at the same time, I do think they're limited for the moment.
I agree, and I mean, I had kind of time to set a stage where we all enjoy at least a minimum level of protection, you know, no matter who we are, who's involved in this. You know, you're either a journalist,
right,
or you're either out of jurisdiction. So we have some time to play this before they can really get nasty. I think it's over, you know, the weeks when they have times to get lawyers really sort of go, this is a special situation. How can we interpret this to our advantage? Like we see them do this all the time, you know, whether it's drones or wiretapping or whatever. They'll go, well, according to this law from the 1840s, you know, we can apply X, Y, or Z authority.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes time, and that takes agreement.
Yeah,
and, that
and
takes
also,
argument.
you know, I mean, I think the more public we are out there too, like as journalists, and the more protection that's going to give as well. Have you started to give thought to when you're ready to come forward?
I'm ready whenever Honestly, I think there's sort of an agreement that it's not going to bias the reporting process. That's my primary concern at this point. I don't want to get myself into the issue before it's going to happen anyway, and where it takes away from the stories that are getting out.
About tens of millions of Americans who weren't suspected of doing anything, who were surveilled in this way.
Your thoughts for a moment. I want to continue this conversation because these are really important, sensitive issues, and the public out there has a right to know what's going on. Stand by.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Now, another explosive article has just appeared, this time in the Washington Post. It's breaking news that it reveals another broad and secret U.S. government surveillance program. The Washington Post and The Guardian in London reporting that the NSA and the FBI are tapping directly into the central servers of 9 leading internet companies, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, and Apple. The Post says they're extracting audio, video, photographs, emails, documents, and connection logs that enable analysts to track a person's movements and contacts over time. Let's discuss this latest revelation. They're coming out fast. Bill Binney, the former official of the NSA who quit back in 2001, you were angry over what was going on. You'd be known as a whistleblower right now. Bill, what do you think about this Washington Post story?
Well, I assume it's just a continuation of what they've been doing all along.
So you're not surprised? Do you have any idea who's leaking this information?
I don't know who leaked this. I have no doubt that the administration will launch an investigation not into who approved these programs, but into who leaked the information.
I'm not shocked that the companies are denying it. I don't assume that. Do you believe them? There may be some technical basis on which they can say that we are not actively collaborating, or they don't have what we consider in our own definition to be direct access to our servers. But what I do know is that I've talked to more than one person who has sat at a desk at a web portal and typed out commands and reached into those servers from a distance. So whatever they want to call that, that's what's happening.
Well, what I would call it is the single biggest infringement on American civil liberties probably of all time, isn't it?
It's interesting, Artie, you have the New York Times now today saying that the administration has lost all credibility.
Yeah, the New York Times slammed President Obama for this, and frankly, I was used to that. The New York Times used to slam George Bush for protecting the country and for the steps he took. And I don't want us to drop our guard. I don't want us to be struck again. As we saw in Boston, Anderson, people are willing to sacrifice their civil liberties. People sheltered inside, which was
How can you believe in freedom, do you think? I mean, try and play devil's advocate for me. When you have secret courts, secret operations like PRISM, secret investigations which go into every spit and cough of every American's lives without any member of the American public knowing about it. That's not freedom, is it?
In 2008, they eliminated the warrant requirement for all conversations except ones that take place by and among Americans exclusively on American soil. So they don't need warrants now for people who are foreigners outside of the U.S., but they also don't need warrants for Americans who are in the United States communicating with people reasonably believed to be outside of the U.S. So again, the fact that there are no checks, no oversight about who's looking over the NSA's shoulder means that they can take whatever they want. And the fact that it's all behind a wall of secrecy and they threaten people who want to expose it means that whatever they're doing, even violating the law, is something that we're unlikely to know until we start having real investigations and real transparency into what it is that the government is doing.
Glenn Greenwald, congratulations again on exposing what is a true scandal. I appreciate you joining me.
I just heard from Lindsay, and she's still alive, which is good, and free. My rent checks apparently are no longer getting through to my landlord, so they said if we don't pay them in 5 days, we'll be evicted, which is strange because I've got a system set up that automatically pays them. So there's that, and apparently there's construction trucks all over the street of my house. So it's, I wonder what they're looking for. It is an unusual feeling that's kind of hard to like describe or convey in words, but not knowing what's going to happen the next day, the next hour, the next week. It's scary, but at the same time it's liberating. You know, the planning comes a lot easier because you don't have that many variables to take into play. You can only act and then act again.
Now all these phone calls are being recorded digitally, not for content, but for origin and destination. Now word the government is going right into the servers of these large internet companies. How does the government, politically speaking, make the argument that this is essential to national security and not a dramatic overreach in terms of personal privacy?
It's difficult, Matt, because as Peter was pointing out, overnight we had an extraordinary late night, close to midnight, announcement and a declassification from the Director of National Intelligence. They are scrambling. The administration's already supported strongly by leaders in both parties from the intelligence committees.
GCHQ has an internal Wikipedia at the top secret, super classified level, where anybody working in intelligence can work on anything they want. Yep. That's what this is. I'm giving it to you. You can make the decisions on that, what's appropriate, what's not. It's going to be documents of different types, pictures and PowerPoints and Word documents, stuff like that.
Sorry, can I take that seat?
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I've got you to repeat. So in these documents, they will show...
Yeah, there will be a couple more documents on that. That's only one part, though. Like, it talks about tempora and a little more thing. That's the wiki article itself. It was also talking about a self-developed tool called UDAQ, U-D-A-Q. It's their search tool for all the stuff they collect, was what it looked like. Yeah. It's going to be projects. It's going to be troubleshooting pages for a particular tool.
Thanks. What's the next step? When do you think you'll go public? Or?
I think it's pretty soon. I mean, with the reaction, this escalated more quickly. I think pretty much as soon as they start trying to make this about me, which should be any day now.
Yeah.
I'll come out just to go, hey, this is not a question of somebody skulking around in the shadows. Yeah. These are public issues. These are not my issues. These are everybody's issues. And I'm not afraid of you. You're not going to bully me into silence like you've done to everybody else. And if nobody else is going to do it, I will. And hopefully when I'm gone, whatever you do to me, there'll be somebody else who'll do the same thing. It'll be the sort of internet principle of the Hydra. You can stomp one person, but there's going to be 7 more of us.
Yeah. Are you getting more nervous?
I mean... No, I think the way I look at stress, particularly because I sort of knew this was coming, because I sort of volunteered to walk into it, I'm already sort of familiar with the idea. I'm not worried about it. When somebody busts in the door, suddenly I'll get nervous and it'll affect me. But until they do, I'm eating a little less. That's the only difference, I think.
Let's talk about the issue with when we're going to say who you are.
Yeah.
This is, you have to talk me through this because I have a big worry about this.
Okay, tell me.
Which is that if we come out and I know that you believe that your detection is inevitable and that it's inevitable imminently. There's, in the New York Times today, Charlie Savage, the fascinating Sherlock Holmes of political reporting, deduced that the fact that there's been these leaks in succession probably means that there's some one person who's decided to leak
somebody
a bunch
else
of stuff.
Quoted you as saying it was one of your readers, and somebody else who put another thing.
So I mean, it's fine. I want people to. I want it to be, like this is a person. I want to start introducing the concept that this is a person who has a particular set of political objectives about informing the world about what's taking place. I'm keeping it all anonymous, totally, but I want to start introducing you in that kind of incremental way. But here's the thing. What I'm concerned about is that if we come out and say, here's who this is, here's what he did, the whole thing that we talked about, that we're going to basically be doing the government's work for them, and we're going to basically be handing them, a confession, and helping them identify who found it. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe they'll find out quickly, and maybe they'll know. But is there any possibility that they won't? Are we kind of giving them stuff that we don't, or
possibility that they know, but they don't want to reveal it because they don't know,
or that they don't know, and we're going to be telling them? Like, is it a possibility that they're going to need like 2-3 months of uncertainty, and we're going to be solving that problem for them? Or let me just say the or part. Maybe it doesn't matter to you. Like maybe you want it. You're not coming out because you think inevitably they're going to catch you and you want to do it first. You're coming out because you want to fucking come out and you want to be heard.
There is that. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to hide on this and skulk around. I don't think I should have to. Obviously, there's circumstances that are saying that. And I think it is powerful to come out and be like, look, I'm not afraid. And I don't think other people should either. I was sitting in the office right next to you last week. We all have a stake in this. This is our country. And the balance of power between the citizenry and the government is becoming that of the ruling and the ruled, as opposed to actually, the elected and the electorate.
Okay, so that's what I need to hear, that this is not about...
But I do want to say, I don't think there's a case that I'm not going to be discovered in the fullness of time. It's just a question of time frame. You're right. It could take them a long time. I don't think it will. But I didn't try to hide the footprint because, again, I intended to come forward the whole time.
I'm going to post this morning just a general defense of whistleblowers.
That's fine, yeah.
And you in particular, without saying anything about you. I'm going to go post that right when I get back. And I'm also doing like a big fuck you to all the people who keep like talking about investigations. Like that, I want that to be like the fearlessness and the fuck you to like the bullying tactics has got to be completely pervading everything we do.
And I think that's brilliant. I mean, your principles on this, I love. I can't support them enough. Because it's inverting the model that the government has laid out, where people who are trying to say the truth skulk around and they hide in the dark and they quote anonymously and whatnot. I say yes, fuck that.
Okay, so here's the plan then. I mean, and this is the thing. It's like once you, I think we all just felt the fact that this is the right way to do it. It's you feel the power of of your choice. You know what I mean? It's like, and I want that power to be felt in the world.
Okay.
And it is it's the ultimate standing up to them, right? Like, I'm not gonna fucking hide even for like 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get right in your face.
Yeah.
You don't have to investigate. There's nothing to investigate. Here I am.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just incredibly powerful. And then the question just becomes, how do we do this in the right, the perfect way?
Yeah.
And that's my burden, and that's what I'm going to... So today is going to be the story in the morning, assuming that this doesn't change on the Guardian end. It's going to be the story in the morning just to keep the momentum going, just to keep, like, the disclosures coming. A big one at night. Now it's becoming like, okay, this is a major leak. And after today, when we post the 2 things that we're going to pose, it's going to be... what the fuck is this leak and who did it? I guarantee you.
I just want to make sure, move over slightly.
Do you want me to move a little more over? Or? Okay.
I just want to, all right. All right, we're rolling.
So let's just begin with some basic background information, like just state your name, what position you held in the intelligence community, and how long you worked within that community.
Okay. Just so I'm aware of where we're going, how in depth are we going? Just in general, like I'm currently an infrastructure analyst, you know, Booz Allen Hamilton, not going through my whole backstory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like, yeah, summary kind of.
Okay. My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
And what are some of the positions that you held previously within the intelligence community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
And what kind of clearances have you held? What kind of classification?
Top secret. So people in my levels of access for systems administration or as an infrastructure analyst typically have higher accesses than an NSA employee would normally have. Normal NSA employees have a combination of clearances called TS, SI, TK, and Gamma. That's top secret, signals intelligence, talent keyhole, and Gamma. And they all relate to certain things that are sort of core to the NSA mission. As a systems administrator, you get a special clearance called PRIVAC, for privileged access, which allows you to be exposed to information of any classification, regardless of what your position actually needs.
Just before we go, a reminder of our top story, and that's that the former CIA technical worker Edward Snowden says he's responsible for leaking information that US authorities have been monitoring phone and internet data. The US Justice Department confirmed it's in the first stages of a criminal investigation.
Leave it longer or cut it shorter? What do you think? As far as the video that people saw, am I less identifiable now? Was it? Because I can't go all the way down. It's still going to be stubble. I don't have the blade for closer.
Will you be talking to any other media about this story today?
I am.
Will you be coming to our office?
Basically, it would be interesting to ask, of course, about where is Snowden now, what his plans are. Well, I'm obviously not going to talk about that, so unless you have any other questions, it's going to be a pretty...
What are your plans, please? Are you staying in Hong Kong for the time being?
For a little while.
And do you have any hopes to write more about this story, or are you stopping new writing about this story?
No, I'm going to continue to write about it.
Have you had any pressure from the US authorities about continuing to report on this?
No.
And have you heard anything about what could be the attitude of Hong Kong authorities towards this case, whether they've contacted you or asked you anything about the whereabouts of Snowden, and whether that is another...
I haven't heard from the authorities of any government.
And where do you think the story is going then? For you, and of course for Snowden, and of course for the US media and the US administration in general?
Well, for me, I'm going to continue to do my reporting on what the government has been doing and what I think my readers should know about. As for him, I don't think anyone knows.
They can have people come after me or any of their third-party partners. You know, they work closely with a number of other nations. Or, you know, they could pay off the triads, or, you know, any of their agents or assets. We have a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong.
Around a third of the country's 1.2 billion people are very poor. Hello, I'm Daniela Reporter. The top stories this hour. Facing a criminal investigation, the whistleblower released details of how the US is monitoring phone calls and internet data goes public. Security forces in Afghanistan say a number of Taliban insurgents have targeted Kabul's airport. Now it's time for our newspaper review and looking at what's making headlines around the world. Let's start with The Guardian, our top story. This is revealing the identity of the former CIA employee, who the paper says leaked information exposing the scale of American surveillance of the internet. Edward Snowden.
What a great story.
Hero, villain, what's his name?
Well, I think it's a fantastic story, first off. It could be straight out of a John le Carré novel. I mean, when you read what he did, yes, he got the material. He then decided to go to the place he identified as being very difficult for America to get at him, which is Hong Kong, because, of course, technically inside China, the one country, two systems policy there, meaning he will get potentially some protection, he thought. All very well planned. It could be just out of a spy novel. But what about the details?
With the latest that could make it worse, but
social media and the web, look at how technology
it shows the lower half of my face.
From hit hotels to controversy over mobile roaming rates, from upgrades to air miles to travel apps. Wherever you're travelling now, join me, Fiona Foster, at Fast Track every weekend here on BBC World News. Analysis with a global perspective. Join me, Yovita Lemay, on Trinity Financial Capital, only on BBC World News.
Snowden says he'd become increasingly dismayed by what he saw as the growing power of the NSA, hence his decision to pass on documents which are said to reveal not only that the organization monitored millions of phone calls, but that it had direct access to some of the biggest internet companies in the world.
What happens, happens. We've talked about this. I knew what the risks were. If I get arrested, I get arrested. We were able to get the information that needed to get out. And you and Glenn are able to keep reporting, regardless what happens to me.
Now, 29-year-old Edward Snowden says that US intelligence agencies gathered millions of phone records and monitored internet data. The Guardian newspaper reveals his identity at his own request. From Washington, David Willis has...
I'm sorry, who's asking?
Unmasked in a video on the...
I'm afraid you have the wrong room. Thank you. Wall Street Journal. Yes. I'm sorry, say again? No, thank you. No calls. I think they have the wrong number. Yeah, no calls. Thank you. Wait, I'm sorry. If it's two men from the front desk, they can call, but no outside calls. Wait, actually, just let them through. Wait, ma'am? Fuck. Yes. Wait, is it a lawyer? Yeah, no. I mean the people who are asking. Ask them if they are lawyers. No, tell her that she has the wrong number and there's no Mr. Snowden here.
Hi, Robert. Can you talk right now? I'm safely going into the room. I'm not safely with the client. Okay. So can we talk together about the plan? Is this the application started already or what? Technically. Yeah, but so technically it haven't started yet. Would you mind to talk to in speakerphone? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm the client.
Hi, Edward. How are you holding up?
Pretty good. I'm doing well.
Okay, I just met with the head of the UNHCR Hong Kong, and they're aware that you're raising the protection you're entitled to under the UNHCR, and they would like you to come in with us to the UN. If you come now, it's lunchtime, but they're going to let us in. No one else can get in.
Okay.
And within the UNHCR, there's separate exits from buildings, so we have a good opportunity. If any of the media finds out you're there, we'll be able to exit a different way from the building.
Okay, that's great. Is it okay if I bring equipment? Because I'm just kind of going so I can leave in any direction at any time and not come back if necessary.
Just walk out of there. You don't have to go back.
Okay.
Take whatever you want with you, and just go with Mr. Mann. I will pick you. He knows where I'm going to pick you guys up, and then I'll bring you into the UNHCR.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Thank you so much for helping.
He's quite worried about the next day, about the accommodation, or he's going to stay. Whether there is something private and they cannot be discovered by the police.
Don't worry about that now. Let's just get up to the UN.
Okay, I see. Okay, I will give you a call, hit up it before I restart, okay? Okay, thank you. Sorry, we don't have a car with such.
Okay.
What I'm thinking, we may ask the concierge to arrange a car, or we just go down and catch a taxi. But the traffic here in Tsim Sha Tsui is quite difficult to get a taxi.
Yeah, so is there precedent for this where Hong Kong would extradite someone for political speech?
No, I don't aware of. If we have a torture claim or asylum seeking claim on that, then they ought, under the law, they ought to give you a reconnaissance so for you to stay in Hong Kong, because they don't know where to dump you back yet.
The President certainly does not welcome the way that this debate has earned greater attention in the last week. The leak of classified information about sensitive programs that are important in our fight against terrorists who would do harm to Americans is a problem. But the debate itself is legitimate and should be engaged.
Edição de domingo.
Mas já amanhã vai ser na internet, não?
Amanhã à noite.
Sim.
Posso tatuar? Mas tem que ver.
Eu quero te mostrar o documento novo agora. Você vai ver isso muito mais claramente do que essa. Essa está o mapa que os cabos onde eles estão coletando os dados para a prisão. Aqui mostra quantos eles estão coletando. O mais grosso, a linha, ou mais quantidade eles estão coletando. Você pode ver aqui linhas, o cabos é bem grosso para Brasil no sul e o norte o cabos na mar de Brasil. Mostra que eles estão coletando muitas coisas no programa Prism, que eu acho que é muito importante porque Prism é Facebook, Skype, YouTube, Yahoo, Hotmail e mostra muito trânsito sendo roubado do Brasil. Mas não sabemos quanto o governo brasileiro sabe e quanto colaboração eles têm com empresas brasileiras também. Não sabemos disso, mas vamos saber, eu acho.
Dia saberemos tudo, ou quase tudo.
É.
Right, so which ones do we want here then? This is operational stuff, so we mustn't say any of this.
So redact that.
We'll go to the top. What about the Alexander quote? Is that
That's in tarmac. Why can't we collect all the signals all the time? Sounds like a good summer homework project for Menwith. Peter Alexander, the head of the NSA, on a visit to UK. This one.
Yeah. So, it's a secret document, isn't it? Secret document. We've got a stick here that should just have 3 single slides on them. If it's got more than 3 single slides on them, we have to be extremely careful. Yeah, that's it. This is really dangerous stuff for us. Guardian is, you make mistakes at the very end where we've kept it all under lock and key, and no, I know, I'm not saying that. They will come in and smack the front door down if we elaborate on that. And he said, the Prime Minister's extremely concerned about this. And they kept saying, this is from the very top.
As you can see on this map, the flight that reportedly has Snowden aboard has almost reached its destination here in Moscow, scheduled to land in the Russian capital within minutes.
As you may have heard, there is a CIA agent who has revealed a lot of information, and he is now trapped in the airport in Moscow. We managed to get him out of Hong Kong, but when he landed in the Moscow airport, the American government had cancelled his passport. So formally, he hasn't entered into Russian territory. He's in the transit area of the airport, and one of our people is accompanying him. We are trying to arrange a private jet to take him from Moscow to Ecuador, or perhaps maybe Venezuela, or maybe Iceland, countries where he would be safe.
A palavra de Vossa Senhoria pelo tempo que julgar necessário.
Sim, obrigado e boa tarde a todos. A primeira coisa, a justificação para os americanos para tudo, desde o ataque de 11 de setembro, é terrorismo. Tudo para a segurança nacional, para proteger nossa população. Na realidade, é o oposto. Tem muito documentos que não tem nenhum relacionamento com nada sobre terrorismo ou segurança nacional, mas só sobre competição com outro país, outras empresas, industrial, financial, econômica. A segunda coisa sobre o X-Keyscore. Quando publicamos os primeira, segunda, terceira artigos, a defesa do governo americano está: não estamos invadindo o conteúdo ou comunicação, só os metadados, os fatos sobre a identidade, sobre com quem você está falando, o que está falando ligando para você, a duração da comunicação. Na realidade, se eu posso saber todas as pessoas com quem você está comunicando e todas as pessoas com quem eles estão comunicando, e onde você fica quando você está comunicando, e a duração e o local, eu posso saber muito sobre sua personalidade, sua atividade, sua vida. É um vazio grande na privacidade. Mas, na realidade, essa defesa é totalmente falsa. O governo americano tem capacidade para invadir não só metadados, mas coisa que você está falando dentro de e-mails, ou coisas que você está falando na telefone, ou as palavras que você está entrando na Google para pesquisar coisas na internet, qual websites você está visitando, os documentos que você está mandando para colegas. Esse sistema vai mostrar quase tudo que todas as pessoas estão fazendo na internet. Então, se você é um jornalista fazendo uma investigação do governo americano, ou se você trabalha com uma empresa que está dando competição grande para uma empresa americana, ou se você está alguém que trabalha com direitos humanos contra o governo americano, ou qualquer muitas outras coisas, eles podem invadir essas comunicações com muita facilidade. Se você é americano, morando nos Estados Unidos, eles precisam ir primeiro para o tribunal e pedir permissão, sempre receber. Mas se você não é americano, eles não precisam nada, nenhuma aprovação do quadro para fazer isso. Eu acho que as consequências da eliminação da privacidade é difícil às vezes para analisar, mas está muito importante para entender que essa vai ter impacto grande, a habilidade para a população, para fazer manifestações, para fazer organização política contra o governo, é diminuído muito quando está sem privacidade.
May I collect all phones, please?
I have everything here.
Put them in the refrigerator. So, as you know, in June, Snowden was charged with 3 legal violations, felonies, principally under a World War I era criminal law called the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act is an extremely broad criminal prohibition against the sharing or dissemination of what's called national defense information. It was only used to prosecute people who had been accused of acting with a foreign power, spies, not whistleblowers. And it's a very unusual legal representation, I think, not just for all of you, but for me as well. The Espionage Act does not distinguish between leaks to the press in the public interest and selling secrets to foreign enemies for personal profit. So under the Espionage Act, it's not a defense if the information that was disclosed should not have been withheld in the first place, that it was improperly classified. It's not a defense if the dissemination was in the public interest, that it led to reforms. Even if a court determines that the programs that were revealed were illegal or unconstitutional, that's still not a defense under the Espionage Act. The government doesn't have to defend the classification. It doesn't have to demonstrate harm from the release. All of this is irrelevant. So when we say that the trial wouldn't be fair, we're not talking about what human rights lawyers think of as fair trial practices. We're saying the law, the statute itself, eliminates any kind of defense that Snowden might be able to make and essentially would equate him with a spy. And of course, those 3 counts could be increased to 100 or 200 or 300. They could charge him separately for each document that has been published by a journalist. And I think that we all recognize, even though we sit here as lawyers in a lawyers' meeting, that it's probably 95% politics and 5% law, how this will be resolved.
Mr. Snowden has been charged with very serious crimes, and he should be returned to the United States, where he will be granted full due process and every right available to him as a United States citizen, facing our justice system under the Constitution.
I don't think Mr. Snowden was a patriot. I called for a thorough review of our surveillance operations before Mr. Snowden made these leaks. My preference, and I think the American people's preference, would have been for a lawful, orderly examination of these laws, a thoughtful, fact-based debate that would then lead us to a better place.
Oh my God. David. No, my baby. You okay?
Just want to go.
Okay. You just have to walk it.
How are you?
Good. I'm totally fine. I didn't sleep at all. I couldn't sleep.
I know.
Recent reports have revealed that the NSA have access to encryption keys, and they paid tech companies to introduce backdoors in encryption protocols. So we're going to talk about ways in which we can defend ourselves against governments spying on us. So Mr. Jacob Appelbaum is an encryption and security software developer and journalist. Ladar Levison is the founder of the encrypted email service LavaBit, used by Edward Snowden. You have the floor.
Thank you. LavaBit is an email service that hopefully one day will be able to stand on its own without any references to Snowden. My service was designed to remove me from the possibility of being forced to violate a person's privacy. Quite simply, LavaBit was designed to remove the service provider from the equation. By not having logs on my server and not having access to a person's emails on disk, I wasn't eliminating the possibility of surveillance. I was simply removing myself from that equation. In that surveillance would have to be conducted on the target, either the sender or the receiver of the messages. But I was approached by the FBI quite recently and told that because I couldn't turn over the information from that one particular user, I would be forced to give up those SSL keys and let the FBI collect every communication on my network without any kind of transparency. And of course, I wasn't comfortable with that, to say the least. More disturbing was the fact that I couldn't even tell anybody that it was going on. So I decided, if I didn't win the fight to unseal my case, if I didn't win the battle to be able to tell people what was going on, then my only ethical choice left was to shut down. Think about that. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the need to conduct investigations. But those investigations are supposed to be difficult for a reason. It's supposed to be difficult to invade somebody's privacy because of how intrusive it is, because of how disruptive it is. If we don't have our right to privacy, how do we have a free and open discussion? What good is the right to free speech if it's not protected? In the sense that you can't have a private discussion with somebody else about something you disagree with. Think about the chilling effect that that has. Think about the chilling effect it does have on countries that don't have a right to privacy.
I've noticed a really interesting discussion point, which is that what people used to call liberty and freedom, we now call privacy. And we say, in the same breath, that privacy is dead. This is something that really concerns me about my generation, especially when we talk about how we're not surprised by anything. I think that we should consider that when we lose privacy, we lose agency, we lose liberty itself, because we no longer feel free to express what we think. There's this myth of the passive surveillance machine, but actually what is surveillance except control? This notion that the NSA are passive, this is nonsense. What we see is that they actively attack European citizens, American citizens, and in fact, anyone that they can if they perceive an advantage.
Und dann kommt jetzt der entscheidende Abschnitt, spricht viel dafür, dass es die SES war, die das Handy von Kanzlerin Merkel ins Visier genommen hat. Also wir haben die Karte.
Ja.
Da müsste ich mal einen etwas detaillierteren Blick drauf werfen, um hier abzugleichen, ob das alles stimmt. Berthold hat auch als Warnung irgendwie rumgeschickt, nicht an dich, dass man von einem Handy sprechen soll, weil es gibt ja... Lass uns das machen, lass uns
people here. I'll have to give that in testimony.
And what are you going to tell?
Everything I can, truthfully.
What will you talk about?
Whatever the questions they ask me.
Yeah, I think it's over there.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Hello, have a good day.
Hey. How are you? Good. How are you? Good to see you again.
Nice to meet you
Yeah.
again, yes.
It is my pleasure to be here. I feel that it's important to testify about what's really going on behind the scenes in the intelligence community around the world, not just in NSA. And all these programs that Edward Snowden has exposed fundamentally are ways of acquiring information. Every dictatorship down through history has always done it. One of the first things they need to do is to try to acquire knowledge of their population, and that's exactly what these programs do. I see this as the most major threat to our democracies all around the world.
What do you think they're doing to reporters, those of us that are working directly with Snowden documents? How do you think they would approach dealing with people like us?
You're on the cast iron cover list, which means any electronic device you use that they can attach to you, they'll record and capture all that data.
And what do they do with that data? They're just trying to figure out what we're doing?
Well, that's part of it, but the other part, primarily part, is for them, I think, is to find the sources of information you're getting.
So if I have a confidential source who's giving me information as a whistleblower, and he works within the US government, and he's concerned about what he perceives as violations of the Constitution, and he gets in touch with me,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, from there on, they would nail him and start watching everything he did. And if he started passing data, I'm sure they'd take him off the street. I mean, the way you have to do it is like Deep Throat did, right? In the Nixon years, meet in the basement of a parking garage, physically.
Let's disassociate our metadata one last time, so we don't have a clear record of your true name and our final communication chain. This is obviously not to say you can't claim your involvement, but as every trick in the book is likely to be used in looking into this, I believe it's better that that particular disclosure come on your own terms. Thank you again for all you've done. So sorry again for the multiple delays, but we've been in uncharted territory with no model to benefit from. If all ends well, perhaps the demonstration that our methods worked will embolden more to come forward. Citizen.
So the update that I want to give you is about the new source that we this is the person who is doing the most of the work on it. And then like basically what's happened is, and
that's actually
That's really dangerous. On the source's side, do they know how to take care of themselves?
Well,
Do you know anything about them?
It's all being done through this.
Okay.
And they're all talking this way.
Okay.
And
I was going to say one of the big questions there is, can they handle it? You know, do they have the?
No, they're very careful.
Okay.
Even they're through that. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where that is.
Wow, that's really something.
You know that? It's not the actual planes.
Right. You mean the control?
It's the process. Who's sending the, yeah. There's a chart, you know, there's like a whole layout and it for everyone.
That is really bold. It's really risky, but you know that's the thing. If they
I mean,
understand what they're doing.
There's this chart. It goes like this. It shows the decision-making chart. It's a chart that it's shaped like this. So up here it says that's the decision-making chart for each one. And
it's so political.
This part's amazing.
That's fucking ridiculous.
It's so shocking.
That's
I know,
the population of entire countries.
I know. That's what we're working on.
That person is incredibly bold, but
also very well aware.
Right. I just hope. I mean.
No, I mean the boldness of it is shocking, but I mean it was obviously.
But the other thing is
motivated by what you did. I mean,
this is going to, that could raise the profile of this whole political situation with whistleblowing to a whole new level because it's going to.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that's a great thing. And I think people are going to see what's being hidden again, by a totally different part of the government.